Okay, y'all. I needed to make a video this week, and I kept kind of seeking God about what it was I was going to talk about in the video. And I thought, well, the thing that kind of kept coming through my mind again and again and again is that I need to tell my story. I'm in a discipleship class at my church, and it's all about disciples making disciples. And it's like, okay, one of the things that they want us to be able to talk about is our story. And so, it made me start thinking about how it would be that I would tell that story. And then I wrote a few things down, and the next thing you know, I'm going, interestingly, my story when it comes to serving God and being a Christian and being born again and getting saved and all that really has no dramatic change to it, because I was 9 years old when I got saved. So I thought, okay, that made me contemplate even more talking about my story. And it's like, okay, my story about how God is changing me and taking me to different places and allowing me to understand more things about who He is and what my life should be all about is a process that lasts decades while I am saved. So it's not exactly a, hey, I was an axe murderer, and next thing you know, got born again and my life's totally different and I do things different and all that, I mean, my life after getting saved was really pretty much exactly the way it was before. I was very fired up, and I'll go into that whole conversion experience at some point in this thing, but as a preliminary thing, it's like, okay, I got to talk about my story and tell people what that story is, so that they can, because there's some people out there who will be encouraged by my story, and there's a lot of young people who can learn some things from my story. So it's like, okay, this is a part of what God wants me to do, is tell my story. So this particular episode is going to be the first parts of what I can remember about my life. I'm 59 years old now. Here it is, March of 2021. And I was born and raised in Chattanooga, Tennessee. 4621 Fairwood Lane, 37416, right off 58 Highway behind the what used to be Red Food Store. Now I think it's called Food City. So a lot of people may know where that's at. I mean, that's where I was born and raised. I was born to a mom who was from Alabama, if I'm not mistaken. I think my dad's parents were from Alabama, but they moved up here. But my parents were just all American story, My dad fought in World War II, came back here to the United States, went to UT Knoxville, got a degree in electrical engineering, and married my mom. He went to work for Morristown Co-op as an electrical engineer, and not too long after that moved to Chattanooga and went to work for a construction company. And they started having a family. My brother, I got an older brother, 2 years older than me, and then I came along. And my earliest memories of my life at 4621 Fairwood Lane were, playing in the yard and riding my bike all over the place, and flying my kite, and playing t-ball, and baseball with friends. And as a very young age, my dad had an organ at the house, a Hammond organ, and he had a couple of Leslies on that thing. And I think the very first one they ever had was an A100. And he told me years after that it was a really great piece. So he grew up, I grew up listening to him play the organ all the time, and the next thing you know, I'm fiddling around with it, and I had a love for music. And so, I started taking piano lessons maybe when I was 5 years old. Man, it was before school was even going on. And I can remember being able to really play that thing. I can remember really excelling at playing the piano and playing the organ. And it just seemed like it came so natural to me. And, in the early days, my piano teacher, organ teacher, taught me how to read music, which I, really didn't see much use for later in life, but I could do it back then. And I played some pretty amazing musical pieces as a very, very young person. And I can remember going to church at Oakwood Baptist Church off the 58 highway up there, and it just seemed like, looking back on it, that was a pretty utopian experience, to be honest with you. Everybody knew me, everybody was watching out for me. I would ride my bicycle all over the place, and people would put me in their car and take me back home and things. It was just like, that's the kind of place that we lived in back in the early 60s. And I just remember it being a really great experience. My mom and dad would get mad at me every now and then, and I was certainly disciplined with the belt and the switch. My mom used to go out to this cherry tree out in my front yard when she was going to whip my can, and she'd bust a switch off that thing and come in and wear me out with that switch. And then my dad, he was pretty good about yanking the belt off and going at me with the belt, all that kind of stuff. That's just how it was growing up. I don't know if that's politically correct, or they don't do that anymore, or I don't know anything about it really these days, but that's the kind of, life that I had growing up. If I got out of line, I got my rear end tan. And I can remember some really amazing experiences that I went to Florida and was on the beach a few times. And I can remember down in Destin one time, man, this goes back, I wasn't 3 years old, maybe 4. All I remember is somebody had, an adult person had not been too kind to me in some situation. I don't exactly know what it was, but I do remember my mom just going hysterical. And she was very protective of me. And my dad was just a worker, he went to work every day. He traveled on the road all the time. He was pretty much in the car on the road Monday through Thursday. Normally by Thursday afternoon or so, he came back home. And I do remember him going to baseball games and watching me do things. And when he was in town, he was there. And my mom took me around to all the music things and baseball and everything else, so that's just kind of how I remember growing up, especially before I started school, or right there in the first grade or second grade. So that's what my early life was all about. So we'll do more episodes and tell you the rest of the story.